to win him away from them. "I have had bread and milk for supper every Sunday night for 30 years," a bony man said to us not long ago. Means what he says. The Osseous does not flatter and seldom praises. Even when he would like to, the words do not come easily. But when he does give you a compliment, you may know that he means it. He is incisive and specific, a little too much so to grace the modern social intercourse where so much is froth. A man of few words. A man of few words is always and invariably a man whose bones are large for his body. The fat man uses up a great many pleasant, suave, merry, harmless words. The thoracic inundates you with conversation. The muscular argues, declares, and states. But the Osseous alone is sparing of his words. The hoarder. Bony people are never lavish with anything. They do not waste anything, nor throw anything away. These are the people who save things and store them away for years, against the day when they may find some use for them. When they do part with them, it is always to pass them on where they will do some one some good. Careful use of money. You never saw a stingy fat man in your life. Imagine a 200-pound miser. Neither have you ever seen a really stingy man who was red-faced and high-chested. Nor have you ever found a real muscular who was a tightwad. But you have known some people who were pretty close with their money, and every one of them was inclined to boniness. When he is poor. Bony men are seldom broke, for they are more careful of expenditures than any other type. Even when they receive small salaries, this type of person always has something laid by. But the extreme Osseous never makes a million. The same caution which prevents his spending much money also prevents the plunges that make big money. The Osseous cares more for money than anyone else. This is what has enabled him, when combined with some other type, to be so successful in banking, a business where you risk the other man's money, not your own. The extreme Osseous is never lax or extravagant with his money, no matter how much he has. He never believes in paying any more for a thing than is necessary. Take note of the man who carries purses for silver instead of letting their change lie loose in their pockets. They are bony every time. Fat people and florid people are the ones who let their greenbacks fall on the floor while paying the cashier. Fear of the future. The rainy day doesn't worry the fat people or the florid ones, but it is seldom out of the consciousness of the bony men and women. So they cling to their $20-a-week clerkship for years because they are afraid to tackle anything entailing risk. Pays his bills. "I had rather trust a bony man than any other kind," is what the credit experts have told us. Other things being equal, he is the most reliable type in money matters and pays his bills more promptly. The bony man is one who seldom approaches the credit man, however. He usually has enough to get the few things he really wants, and if not, he waits till he has. Extremely bony husbands give their wives smaller allowances in proportion to their total income than any other type, and because they are systematic themselves, they are more likely to ask for reports and itemizations as to where it goes. The fat husbands and the florid husbands are the ones who give their wives their last cent and never asks what becomes of it. The repressed man. The Osseous man or woman is always somewhat repressed. Unlike the thoracic who uncorks and bubbles like a champagne bottle, he keeps the lid on his feelings. Bony people are always more reticent than others. They invariably tell less of their private or personal affairs. One may live across the hall from a bony man for years without knowing much about him. He is as secretive as the thoracic is confiding, and as guarded as the alimentive is naive. Loyal to his few friends. "Once your friend, always your friend," can be said about the Osseous oftener than any other type. The Osseous does not make friends easily, and is not a mixer, but keeps his friends for many years. He takes to very few people, but is exceedingly loyal to those of his choice. The salt of the earth. People of the Osseous type say little. They do little for you, and they do not gush, but they are always there when you need them, and always the same. They write few letters to you when away, and use few words and little paper when they do. They are likely to fill every page, to write neatly, and to waste no margins, and to avoid flourishes. Their letters seldom require an extra stamp. Plans ahead. Foresight, laying plans far into the future, and keeping an eye out for breakers ahead, financially and otherwise, are tendencies which come natural to the Osseous. He does not like to wait until the last moment to do a thing. He dislikes unexpectedness and emergencies of any kind. He is always prepared. For instance, a bony person will think out every move of a long journey before boarding his train. Weeks in advance he will have the schedule marked and put away in his coat pocket, and he knows just which coat he is going to wear too. The longest lived. The Osseous lives longer than any other type for two reasons. The first is that his lack of nerves saves him from running down his batteries. He seldom becomes excited and does not exhaust himself in emotional orgies. The second is that he habitually undereats, usually because he does not care so much for food as the first three types, but quite often because he prefers to save the money. People he dislikes. The bony man does not like people who try to speed him up, hurry him, or make him change his habits. Flashy people irritate him, but his worst aversions are people who try to dictate to him. This type cannot be driven. The only way to handle him is to let him think he is having his own way. Likes the submissive. Amenable people who never interfere with him yet lend themselves to his plans, desires, and eccentricities are the favorites of this type. Diseases he is most susceptible to. No diseases can be said to strike the Osseous more frequently than any other type. But moodiness, fear, especially financial fear, long-sustained hatreds and resentments, and lack of change are indirectly responsible for those diseases which bring about the end in the majority of cases. Music he likes. Martial, classical music, and ballads are favorites with the Osseous. Old-time tunes and songs appeal to him strongly. Jazz, which the Alimentive loves, is disliked by most bony people. Reading he prefers. Only a few kinds of reading, a few favorite subjects, and a few favorite authors are indulged in by this type. He will read as long as 25 years on one subject, master it, and ignore practically everything else. When he becomes enamored of another, he reads everything he writes. Reading that points directly to some particular thing he is really interested in makes up many of his books and magazines. He is the kind of man who reads the same newspaper for half a century. Physical assets. His great endurance, capacity for withstanding hardship, indifference to weather, and his sane, under-eating habits are the chief physical assets of this type. Physical liabilities. This type has no physical characteristics which can be called liabilities, except the tendency to chronic diseases. Even in this he runs true to form, slow to acquire and slow to cure. His favorite sports. Hiking and golfing are the favorite sports of this type, because these demand no sudden spurts of energy. He likes them because they can be carried on with deliberation and independence. He does not care for any sport involving teamwork or quick responses to other players. Except when combined with the thoracic type, he especially avoids tennis. Favorite entertainments. Serious plays in which his favorite actors appear are the entertainments preferred by this type. He cares least of all for vaudeville. Social assets. The Osseous has no traits which can properly be called social assets. His general uprightness comes nearest to standing him in good stead socially, however. Social liabilities. Stiffness, reticence, physical awkwardness, and the inability to pose or to praise are the chief social handicaps of this type. Emotional assets. The Osseous is not emotional and cannot be said to possess any assets that are purely emotional. Emotional liabilities. The lack of emotional fervor and enthusiasm prevents this type from impressing others. Business assets. Keeping his word, orderliness, and system are the chief business assets of this type. Business liabilities. A disinclination to mix, The inability